Hello, my name is Hwansan Sunim and this is SEON Meditation in English. The purpose of this program is to share the Sun or Korean Zen Buddhist teachings of Sun Master Songdam, my teacher, with a modern international audience. Sun Master Songdam is the most respected meditation master in Korea. Now, for you viewers at home who are watching this program for the first time, this is our participatory guided meditation program. So if you want to follow along, the first thing that you need to do is to prepare a meditation mat. Now, if you don't own a meditation mat, what you can do is take a large blanket, fold it into a square, and be sitting on that as you follow this program. Now, today's topic of contemplation and meditation is coping with feelings of failure. In my ongoing dialogue with both my Korean and international friends over the years, the topic of failure comes up often. Now, with my Korean friends, what I hear most often are stories of not getting into the school that they wanted to go to, or not getting into the company that they wanted to work for, or not being able to achieve some dream that they once had. Maybe they wanted to become a musician, or a professional athlete, or a doctor, or whatever, but somehow things never worked out. And so now they're left with these feelings, these very painful feelings like crushing disappointment, loss of self-esteem, feelings of personal inadequacy and shame, and even heartbreak. And in addition, there's this feeling that we're not living the life that we want anymore, that life has become unsatisfactory, undesirable even. So then what I hear then are things like, I don't like my life, or I'm not living my life, I'm just enduring it. Or worst of all, I hate my life, I want to die, I would kill myself, but I don't because of what it would do to my family. And even worse than this, finally, in extreme cases, like in cases where people can't get a job, or their business goes bankrupt, or they're fired from the job that they have, or they go through some kind of divorce, in addition to these very painful feelings that come from a sense of failure, they may have to deal with very real personal and economic hardship. And then in cases like that, life begins to feel like a prison, like you're living in a prison and you're being tortured every day. Now, with my international friends, what I hear most often are stories about this sense of never having discovered what to do with my life, not knowing what I'm supposed to do with my life. And with international residents, I hear questions like, what am I really doing all the way out here in Korea? Why am I staying out here for so long? Now, this type of feeling of failure doesn't come with the same kind of shocking impact that the other kinds of situations may evoke. This type of feeling descends upon a person over time like a mist. And over time, we may find ourselves beset with similar feelings of disappointment, loss of self-respect, loss of confidence, feelings of embarrassment, feeling like a loser or a fool, feeling like a failure finally. The failure to have done something with my life. Now, if this goes on for too long, we may begin to feel useless, and then we'll begin to feel hopeless. We may begin to feel like we missed out on our last opportunity to make our lives meaningful and satisfying. It's like we missed the last bus, and now we don't have a chance anymore to live the life that we want. And if that happens, this can lead to real depression and even despair. So feelings of failure come in all sorts of shapes and sizes. And the questions that we want to consider today are, what, if anything, can traditional Sun Buddhist teachings do about this problem in modern living? Can Sun meditation help us to cope with or even overcome these feelings of failure? So why don't we enter first into our guided meditation, and we'll try to take on this very serious problem. So once again, meditation begins with correct posture. So correct seated posture. So the first element is you take your heel, tuck it in like this, and then take your foot and place it on the opposite lap. Now, if your foot doesn't go all the way up on your lap, that's okay. You can just place it on your calf. And if this is too difficult, you can simply place it on the mat in front of you. Okay? The important thing is to create a stable base. A triangular base is created between your tailbone and the 2 points of your knees. So you have this nice, large, stable base for your body to rest on. Next, you want to just straighten your back, straighten up, and tuck your chin in slightly. Tuck your chin in slightly so that the crown of your head rises and your spine becomes as long and straight as possible. And then after that, raise your shoulders up to your ears, roll, and then drop. Take your right hand, place the edge of your right palm against your lower belly, and then just drop. You don't want to be holding it in the air because that creates tension in your body. So just let it, tuck it in against your belly, let it drop. Then place your left hand on top of your right hand, and then let your 2 thumb tips meet in the middle like this. So your thumbs together should create a nice rainbow arc. Take the tip of your tongue and place it lightly against the roof of your mouth just behind the upper row of your teeth. And finally, keep your eyes open and look straight ahead. Now, because your chin is tucked in slightly, the line of your gaze should fall on the floor roughly 10 feet or 3 meters in front of you. So you can just look at the floor in front of you, but don't fixate on any specific point or object. Don't stare at any pattern in the floor. What you want is to look forward and just let your field of vision present itself to you equally. You want your eyes to be relaxed. You don't want to be staring at something in particular. So this is correct posture. Next, we engage correct breathing. And before we begin the actual meditation breathing, we begin with preparation breathing. So we can all do that together. In preparation breathing, what we will do is we're going to breathe in through our nose and completely fill our chest. And then we're going to hold our breath until we begin to feel a little bit uncomfortable. And then finally, when we get to that point of discomfort, we will release our breath through our mouth and squeeze out all the air in our lungs. And we're going to do that 3 times. So why don't we do that all together? And for you viewers watching at home and following along, why don't you follow along as I give the count? Okay? So breathe in, hold, then breathe out through your mouth. Breathe in, hold, then breathe out. Once again, breathe in, hold, and then breathe out. This preparation breathing both revitalizes our body and calms it down too. So with a refreshed mind and body, we can now engage the main form of breathing in meditation, which is called abdominal breathing. Now in abdominal breathing, what we do is we're going to breathe completely through the nose now. We're going to breathe a little bit slower than usual. So we're going to breathe as if we're breathing through our lower belly. So it's also sometimes called belly breathing. So in belly breathing, what we do is we inhale slowly and naturally through our nose. And as we inhale, we push out our lower belly as if the air is going all the way down to our lower belly and filling it up like a balloon. So we breathe in nice and long. And when our belly feels comfortably full, about 80% full, we hold. We hold for 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3. And then we release through our nose, draw in our lower belly, and exhale. The count that Sun Master Songdam recommends is 2 to 3 seconds, to inhale, 2 to 3 seconds to pause, and then 3 to 4 seconds to exhale for slightly longer. Okay, now you can adjust that ratio to meet your body's physical condition. You can make it a little longer and a little shorter. So why don't we try this together? Okay, so breathe in, hold, then breathe out. What you'll find as you hold this posture is that as you continue the breathing, your breathing will become longer and longer. Your breath cycle will become longer. And as your breath cycle becomes longer, you begin to feel your body and your mind start to calm down. Your mind starts to become clear, your body starts to feel light. This is the first effect of meditation. So why don't we all try it together again, including our viewers at home. So breathe in, hold, breathe out. Breathe in, hold, breathe out. Now I ask that all of the members of our studio audience, and of course our viewers at home who are following along, to maintain this form of breathing as best as you can throughout the course of this program, to be in a state of meditation for the entire length of the program. The third element of meditation, after posture and breathing, is thought. What do I think about while I'm meditating? Now, this is the distinctive feature of Sun Buddhist meditation. When we're doing this posture and breathing, we will be thinking of a special thought called a hwadu. And a hwadu is a question that we ask ourselves. We ask ourselves this question with the greatest sincerity and urgency and honesty as possible. And we time this question to our breathing pattern. Okay, now the question translated into English is, what is this? What is this that resides in my body? What is this that directs my actions? When I feel an emotion, what is it that feels that emotion? When I think a thought, what is it that generates that thought? When I hear my name being called, what is it that responds to the call of my name? Now we're going to ask ourselves this question, but we're going to ask ourselves this question in Korean, okay? Because that's how the hwadu was originally formulated. So what is this in Korean is 이, 뭐, 고. And I'll spell that out for you in English. 이, Y-I, that means this. 무엇, M-W-O-T, which means what. And then 고, G-O, which means is. The word order, of course, is different. So, but it means what is this. So understand what it means as you say it. And the way you say it is, once again, using abdominal breathing, we breathe in, we hold, and then with your exhalation, you say in your mind, 이모고. And you take that last syllable, G-O, and trail it along the entire length of your exhalation. Now, one of the tricks here is you want to say imoko as if it's emerging from your lower belly. In China, this part of your body is called a dantian. It's considered the center of energy in your body. So you want to think that the imoko is coming out of your dantian. And you don't want to do this question mindlessly. You want to ask this question with sincere intent. You're really asking yourself this question. You're just doing it according to a systematic procedure. So why don't we all try this together out loud? Okay, so breathe in, hold, and as we exhale together, 이모고. Now, the words in and of themselves don't hold any special value. We ask ourselves this question to create a state of what's called in Buddhism doubt, a state of spiritual doubt, a state of intense, honest questioning. You're really asking yourself this question. You're allowing your mind, your consciousness, to be filled entirely with this question. Now, for beginning meditators like ourselves, I have found that beginning meditators even though this posture, this breathing, and this way of thinking may seem unfamiliar, they're more or less easy to grasp, the basic mechanics of performing meditation. But I've also found that beginning meditators we have a hard time getting our heads around this concept of doubt. What does it really mean? And it is a hard concept or a hard idea to convey. Usually you really just need to practice it and then you sort of get a feel for it. But nonetheless, I'd like to share with you a story that I think will help clarify what's meant by doubt within Sun Buddhism. And this story is actually the story of the origin of the Imoko Hwadu. It's the story of how this question was first asked, under what circumstances, and what happened afterward. So if you know this story, it may help you. I think it will help your practice. So our story begins more than 1,000 years ago in ancient China. In ancient China, there was a great enlightened master named Hui Neng. Now, for those of you who know a little bit about Chinese Buddhism, you'll know that Hui Neng is actually a very famous master, and he is one of the founders and cornerstones of Sun Buddhism, which in China was actually called Chan Buddhism. In any event, Hui Neng was the leader of a very large monastic compound, a monastery in the mountains. And one day he stood in front of the so-called Great Assembly of monastic and lay practitioners. And he said to them, "There is a thing here. It acts as a pillar for the sky, and it holds up the earth. It is brighter than the sun and blacker than slate. It is in the center of all things, but if you look for it, you cannot find it. Its form cannot be drawn, and it has no name. What is this? Imoko." Now, among the congregation, the Great Assembly, there was a young monk named He Tzu Shenhui, and he was one of Hui Neng's most promising disciples. He Tzu Shenhui stood up and he gave a reply. "It is the source of all Buddhas, and it is my, Shinhui's, Buddha nature." Now, according to Sun Buddhist doctrine, this is actually the correct answer. And He Tzu Shenhui delivered his answer very concisely and very cleverly. But Grandmaster Hui Neng rebuked him sharply. He said to him, "I said its form cannot be drawn, and it has no name, and yet you're attaching names like Source and Buddha nature. No matter how hard you try, you will never amount to anything more than a pseudo-intellectual." Now, sometime later, another monk came in and requested an audience with Grandmaster Hui Neng, and this monk's name was Nanyue Huairang. And so the audience was granted, and as Nanyue Huairang approached the master, Hui Neng asked him the question, "What is this that comes thus?" Again, Imoko. Now, when Nanyue Huairang heard this question, he just froze in his tracks. He was thunderstruck. He couldn't move a muscle. He couldn't say anything. He was completely paralyzed. And after a while, he just turned away and walked out. And from then on, he was completely possessed by Hui Neng's question, "What is this that comes thus?" Imoko. He thought about it when he was walking on the road. He thought about it when he was eating his meals. He thought about it day and night. It started to appear in his dreams. And the question grew within his mind and his body over time. And 8 years went by like this. And by then, the question was filling his waking hours, his sleeping hours. It filled the entire universe until finally it erupted into the event that Sun Buddhists call enlightenment, spiritual awakening. Now, after that, Nanyue Huairang returned to Master Hui Neng. And when Hui Neng saw him, he again asked, "What is this that thus comes?" Again, Imoko. And this time, Nanyue Huairang replied, "If you say it's any one thing, then that would be incorrect. So Master Huineng asked him, "On the contrary, is there anything to be cultivated and enlightened to?" And Nanyue Huairang replied, "It's not that there's nothing to be cultivated and enlightened to, but there is no defilement." And Grandmaster Huineng heard that and said, "You are like this, and I am like this." And according to the story, he happily acknowledged Nanyue Huairang's enlightenment. He acknowledged the authenticity of it and transmitted Dharma to him. Now, I'd like to make a few comments about this story. The first thing is the dialogue, the last dialogue between Master Huineng and Nanyue Huairang. After Nanyue Huairang gets enlightened, that's considered an enlightened dialogue. And according to Sun Buddhist tradition, unenlightened people cannot truly understand its deep inner truth. We can hear the words and understand what the words mean, but the deep meaning eludes us. So Sun Master Songdam very strongly warns us not to use our intellect, our theory, our knowledge, or our analytical skills to try and pick this dialogue apart, to try and get at its meaning through our intellectual minds. So I'm going to take him at his word and just leave it there. But I would like to add one more thing, and that is I would like to contrast the two disciples. Now, when the first disciple, He Zi Shenhui, stands up and gives his reply and gets rebuked, it seems like he's a kind of student, and he wants to give the correct answer to the teacher's question. In contrast, Nanyue Huairang, when he hears the question, he engages it as a problem of life, the problem of life, the greatest problem of life. The problem is that we don't know the nature of our own existence. And so because he engages the imoko question with such great sincerity and honesty and authenticity and urgency and intensity, he becomes completely possessed by it. It seizes him and it fills him over the years until finally he gets enlightened. When we perform imoko, when we're performing this form of meditation, we are following in the footsteps of Nanyue Huairang. Now, maybe we don't feel the intensity of the question as much as he did as soon as he heard it. But nonetheless, the idea here is that as we keep asking ourselves, imoko, imoko, we begin to feel what he felt, the doubt, the intensity of the question, the meaning of the question within our hearts, and it begins to fill us. And then we are on the same path that he is on. And if we persist, if we keep going, then we will reach the same enlightenment that Nanyue Huairang reached. This is the basic logic of why we perform imoko during meditation. Okay? So why don't we take a break here, and then when we get back, we'll consider again today's theme, coping with feelings of failure. Okay, now let's scale back and return to the topic of today's episode, which is what can Sun Buddhism do in terms of helping us cope with feelings of failure? Now, the first thing, obviously, that Sun Buddhism can do is the meditation itself. Meditation is designed to reduce, alleviate, and finally eradicate our inner suffering. So, now in specific terms, when we feel ourselves overwhelmed or filled with these painful emotions like disappointment or shame or hopelessness, rather than let ourselves be fully immersed in them, the first thing you want to do is actually engage meditation. So we go to our posture first, straighten up. Even if we're not able to sit in this posture, nonetheless, pay attention to the line from the crown of your head down to your tailbone, and try to make that straight. Tuck in your chin slightly to give yourself a nice straight posture and attain physical stability. And then after that, you can engage preparation breathing. Now the key here is this. If you're really being overwhelmed by negative emotion, if you're really feeling high levels of anxiety or anger or sadness, then don't just do 3 breaths of preparation breathing. Just keep doing the preparation breathing 5 times, 10 times. Do it gently, but just keep going with it until the wave of emotion passes. Breathing through the emotion is the most effective way to get through it. And now once the initial wave has passed, then you can engage your abdominal breathing. And as you engage your abdominal breathing, your body will relax. It'll unclench. Strong emotions tend to make our bodies tense up, and that makes the emotion linger longer. So through the breathing, we relax our body and allow the emotion to move on. And then the next thing is when we do the hwadu, imoko, when we direct our attention to the imoko hwadu, we're naturally drawing our attention away from whatever negative thoughts and emotions are disturbing us. Now, this is very important. In other words, we're increasing our own suffering by paying so much attention to these negative thoughts and emotions whose basic nature is simply to come and go. So by taking our attention away from them, simply saying imoko, simply thinking about it, immediately draws your attention away from these negative thoughts and emotions. And that takes the power out of the emotions and lets them disintegrate more quickly. Now, there's a kind of story that Sun Master Songdam likes to tell. And the story goes kind of like this. Let's say that there's a person walking along, and they trip, and they fall into a cesspool. So you go to help pull them out, and they say, no, I'm good. I'm just going to sit here and relax a little while and enjoy this, and then I'll just come out later. And he says, if you met a person like that, wouldn't you think that person is crazy? But when we fall into negative emotional mind states that are just as toxic and defiled as that cesspool, and we wallow in them and immerse ourselves in them and get attached to all these painful, crazy thoughts and emotions, isn't that just as crazy? That's what he asks. This way, this meditation helps us to jump out of the cesspool of negative thoughts and emotions as quickly as possible. Now, the thing that we need to bear in mind here as beginning meditators is that because we're beginners, at the beginning, it won't feel like it's really working. You'll do the breathing, you'll do the imoko, but it's not a magic formula that will make these deep, powerful, painful emotions disappear in a flash. It's not like you can hit an off switch and suddenly they're gone. People say if you meditate, it gets rid of your negative emotions. It does, but for us beginners, it will take time. So what I would like you to observe when the next time you have a problem with these kind of feelings is try it. When you feel sadness in your heart, or anger, or fear, or shame, or whatever it is that this failed endeavor has caused you to feel, engage the meditation and observe your reactions. And what you'll most likely find is that even though maybe it doesn't make all the pain go away right away, but it makes the pain less. It lessens the pain. Now, the other thing that you can see for yourself is if you use this meditation over time persistently, each time you feel some kind of painful emotion because of the memories of something that went wrong in your life, and you do this imoko in response, you do this abdominal breathing in response, what you'll find is that you recover more quickly. The time that you're suffering will be decreased. And again, that alone makes it worth it. So the trick here, when you use meditation to address your suffering, which is the whole purpose of meditation, when you use it, you need to be patient and you need to be persistent. These very powerful emotions coming from a profound disappointment in our life events won't just disappear overnight. They'll come at us again and again and again in wave after wave after wave, catching us by surprise at times. And we have to be prepared to meet it with this meditation technique that we learn together, the breathing and imoko every single time. So what Sun Master Songdam says in his Dharma speeches is, if you need to, do imoko 1,000 times a day. Do it 10,000 times a day. Do it as many times as it takes. Do it every time that you can think of doing it. This is the kind of persistence that we need. But if we do that, we will find that we go a long way toward mastering our emotions. So this is the first Sun Buddhist teaching that can help us in coping with feelings of failure. Now there's a second one that I would like to share with you that Sun Master Songdam taught me a long time ago. And this form of teaching or practice I will loosely translate as self-reflection. Now when I say self-reflection, I don't mean looking into a mirror and saying, well, who am I really? You know? Or looking back on my life and thinking, well, you know, how did I get from there to here? It's not that kind of reflection, you know? And it's not a kind of self-evaluation either. You don't ask yourself, well, how good a person am I, you know? How good am I at my job? How do I compare with others? You're not grading yourself. It's not that kind of self-reflection either. This is Buddhist reflection. And Buddhists look at all things, all events, all actions in terms of causes and conditions. According to Buddhist teachings, when something happens, either a natural event or a human endeavor, there is a cause that produces that event, but there is also a set of complex conditions that go along with that cause. And if any one of these conditions are absent, then that cause will not produce that effect. So the metaphor that's used to describe this teaching is that of a seed in a tree. The seed is the cause of the tree. The seed will produce the tree, but it needs a set of conditions to do so. It needs at the very least soil, water, and sunlight. If any of these conditions are missing, that seed will not turn into a tree. Now, in human endeavor, human action, the seed is always our intention. We intend to do something. We intend to achieve something. So that's the seed. That's the basic cause of our action, of the actions of our lives. But there's a whole set of conditions that need to be met for our intention to be realized. Among all of those conditions, our ability and our effort are only two. There are other conditions that also need to be in place for our intention to be successfully realized. Probably there are other people involved who need to do what you want them to do. Probably there's an environment around you that needs to be just so for your intention to be realized. And probably you need some luck. Now this is very helpful for us because I think many people tend to think when they succeed, they tend to give themselves all the credit. It was through my ability and effort alone that I achieved the success. And likewise, when there's a failure in my life, we blame ourselves completely. But when we look at it through a Buddhist lens, we see that my ability and my effort were only two elements in a complex network of conditions that I needed to succeed or fail. When you understand that, every time you succeed, you now understand, yeah, my ability and effort worked, but I was lucky too. Likewise, when we fail, we can understand, well, the conditions were in place. And this is where the self-reflection becomes really important. When we reflect on something that went wrong, let's say we were doing a project at work and it just didn't work out and we were the head of the project, so we were blamed for it and it was just this terrible, awful event that's haunting me now. When that happens, you can do this analysis and you may find actually my ability and my effort were more than enough to get this done right, but there were other things missing and so things didn't work out. When you understand that, you don't have to blame yourself anymore. It's no longer really a failure. It's just a situation that didn't work out. Now, on the other hand, we may find that actually there was something wrong that we did. Maybe our ability wasn't enough. Maybe we didn't give enough of a good effort. Maybe we made mistakes along the way. This is actually hugely important because now we're learning about ourselves. We are gaining insight into ourselves and our situation. It may be painful to realize that we did something wrong, but we absolutely need to know, we need to have that information. Why? Because at some point we have to get up again and do something again. And when we do that, if we use the same technique as we did before without any alteration, most likely we'll meet the same failure again. Self-reflection allows us to become aware of our own actions, of our own qualities, and make changes. So under those conditions, if I self-reflect and find that I was in the wrong, then I can make changes and improvements, and when I try again, I'll actually be an improved version of myself. I will have a greater chance of success, and the failure that's been bothering me so long will actually become an ingredient of my eventual future success. So this is a way that self-reflection can really help us. Now, what I want to warn, though, is don't try the self-reflection right after something really bad happens. You're in too much pain at that time. Use the meditation, allow yourself to heal and recover, and then come back to this moment of so-called failure. That failure contains valuable information. You don't just want to throw it away and bury it. Take it out again, use self-reflection, use the meditation to keep calm and clear and objective while you're reflecting upon what has happened. Okay. Now I'd like to return again to the story of Huineng and his two disciples, Nan Yue Huairang and He Zi Shenhui. Now typically this story is kind of a success story. Nan Yue Huairang is held up as a model of how we're supposed to perform meditation. And he gets there in 8 years, so he's kind of a hero. It's a story of a hero. Meanwhile, He Zi Shenhui is held up as an example of how not to do things. And that's basically how the story ends. We end with Nan Yue Huairang becoming an enlightened master, and that's where the story is focused. But when I think of this story again now, I think of poor He Zi Shenhui. I mean, whatever happened to that guy? And the thing that you understand about this story, if you have lived under an enlightened master in a monastery, what you will know is, on the day that Grandmaster Huineng rebukes him so sharply, He Zi Shenhui loses everything. He has been publicly humiliated in front of his peers and colleagues by the person whom he loves and respects and trusts the most in the world, the teacher that he left home to follow, the teacher to whom he has dedicated his life and vowed to follow forever. So he cannot help but be emotionally devastated. There are also social and economic repercussions. From that point on, he's known as the guy who doesn't get it, the guy who doesn't really understand the master's teaching, the man who got it wrong. So his social standing in his community is permanently changed. And if you look at it in modern terms, if he wants to get the equivalent of another job, if he wants to go work in another monastery, he's got a black mark on his record. Again, he's the guy who doesn't really understand Sun Buddhist teachings. So his whole life has been affected. Now, when I think of his situation, my thought is that I think that he probably got up again. He was trained. He used his meditation. He used his self-reflection. He recovered, he got up, he re-engaged the practice, now knowing what he did wrong, and eventually made it to enlightenment too. Now the reason why I believe this is because I can't believe that an enlightened master of Huineng's stature could ever be so cruel and brutal to his own disciple without good reason. He must have done it in order to advance He Zi Shenhui on his path to enlightenment. So there must have been a reason, and I think that the reason is that it was leading He Zi Shenhui to his eventual enlightenment. If that's the case, his public humiliation, again, is not a failure, but an ingredient in his eventual success, as long as he uses his training and his teachings to get up again and to recover. But on the other hand, maybe he never gets enlightened. Maybe it's only Nan Yue Huairang who achieves enlightenment. Even so, I think he uses his training and self-reflection to get back up again. He goes back to his practice, he knows what he's been doing wrong, he tries his best, and he continues to grow, personally and spiritually. And he uses his talents and resources to live well and to give what he can to the world, and finally to live a life of meaning and dignity. So I actually think that this story is a story of two successes, but the second success is slightly hidden by an initial failure. And I think both of these stories are really about us. There are times when we get it on the first try, like Nan Yue Huairang, and we'll get our round of applause. And then there are a lot of times when we don't, and we get knocked off our feet and we have to get up again. We can use this training and this teaching to get up again. Now, on a final note, on a personal note, I'd like to say that I have found this meditation and this method of self-reflection indispensable, absolutely necessary in my life as a Sunim. When I first came to Korea, I couldn't speak Korean. I was uncomfortable in the culture, and I was a foolish young man with all the shortcomings and faults of foolish young men. And I had to take on all of those things. And there were many times when I thought I just won't make it. But every time I trusted in my teacher and tried to use the meditation and the self-reflection. And I was a beginner too at the time, but it helped. It made the difference. It got me over the hump. It got me through things. So I'm speaking from personal experience, and I would very much like to recommend this to all of you. Okay, we're out of time now. So once again, let's close this episode with our closing meditation. Okay, and in advance, I will thank all of our studio audience members for participating, and thank you all viewers at home for following along. And I hope that we can all see each other again next episode next week. Okay, so now we will engage in our closing meditation. May we all attain the Buddha. Okay, please. Okay, we will begin our meditation.